My name is Scott Challoner and you are listening to the Leaders Council podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. As regular listeners of this programme will know, part of our mission here at the Leaders Council is to bring you a variety of distinct perspectives on leadership, and today that mission takes us all the way to Asia, where we're joined by Maria Kotova, Global Business Development Manager and Senior Advisor at Dezan Shira and Associates. Dezan Shira is a pan-Asia multidisciplinary professional services firm providing market entry, legal, accounting, tax, HR, tech and operational advisory services to international investors. Quite the mix. Maria, very warm welcome to you today, and by all means, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Scott, for having me today. It's a great pleasure to join you on this program.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure having you alongside us as well, Maria. I've only, of course, given a very brief overview as to what it is that Dezan Shira, of course, does. But just for the listeners tuning in, could you just expand a little bit on the work of your business in your own words, please?
Yeah, sure. For the past 30 years, we help British businesses with market entry advisory and ongoing compliance from both legal and financial perspectives. We cover a pretty broad area in Asia, actually, with 24 offices across the region, including China, India, and ASEAN countries.
Yeah, fantastic. So plenty of activity, of course, in on the Asian continent, and something which is of particular interest to businesses in Great Britain at the moment is investment in the Vietnamese market. And that's something that I want to sort of talk about in a bit more detail today. We often hear that the Vietnamese economy is referred to as a miracle in that it's performing as well as it is. What is the story, Maria, behind the Vietnamese economy and why it does tend to do so well?
Right. It's actually a very good question to start with, because a lot of people don't realize how fast the economy grew over the past 3 decades. Vietnam basically grew from one of the poorest countries in the world to the middle income one in just 3 decades. And everyone remembers the Vietnamese War. It lasted 20 years, and in 1975 it was ended. And the harsh post-war crackdown led to the collapse of Vietnamese economy, actually. At that time, per capita income was about $200 to $300 in the mid-80s. So you can imagine the country was ruined, the economy was ruined, and it's hard to imagine how the economy performs these days. And mainly it was driven by the economic reforms, political reforms. It was implemented by the government in 1986. It was called Doi Moi. Forgive me for my Vietnamese. And the original focus of this reform was on the agricultural sector, because 70% of the workforce actually worked in fields. So they took approach of moving away from collectivization to the private business development, where farmers were allowed to put their own price to keep the profit. Government also reduced and scaled down significantly the amount of monopolies. It was almost 10 times reduction, and that also had their effect. At the same year, government created the first law on foreign investment. It enabled foreign companies to invest in Vietnam. And it was revised several times since then to encourage foreign businesses to invest, to ease the doing business in Vietnam kind of status. So it has external liberalization with domestic reforms through deregulation and lowering the cost of doing business in the country. So Vietnam also looked at the outside. So they implemented the policy of one door, of opening the door. And it led to various free trade agreements that were signed over the past 20 years. So in 1995, Vietnam signed the first free trade agreement with Asian countries. And then in 2007, it joined WTO. So after that, there were several other free trade agreements with different countries signed with China, Japan, US, and so on. So it dramatically lowered the tariffs to hosted countries. Moreover, recently, like the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership was established, and Vietnam is an active member of this. It expected to cover 30% of the world's population, so it's a very big deal for Vietnam. If you look at UK and Vietnam relationship, in May last year, Vietnam and UK free trade agreement also came into effect, paving the way for continued and increasing trade between the countries.
Yeah.
So finally, if we also look at the last factor that also contributed to the miracle, as we call it, it's actually heavy investment into human and physical capital. So Vietnam made a large public investment in primary education. This was a necessary move, as the growing population also means like a lot of need for job, and it led to the development of skilled workforce, which has increased productivity and competitiveness over the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems that by looking outward from the very beginning and making it easy to go and do business in Vietnam, it's been easy to bring investment into the country and increase that productivity, increase that competitiveness. You say, of course, that it's grown exponentially from like a sort of a poor country to a middle income country in just 3 decades. So in the present day, what is the current state of Vietnam's economy and the investments in the marketplace? What is in play there at the moment?
Right. Today, we see that Vietnam is a fast-growing middle-income country with almost 100 million population. Its GDP recorded last year to about 290 billion US dollars, and it's actually estimated to grow 6.5% this year. It's a positive scenario. Actually, it might be 6%, but some advisors are saying it might be 6.5. So it's worth also noting that Vietnam is the only major Southeast Asia country and economy which avoided the recession in 2020 when worldwide economies were struggling with COVID pandemic. This achievement shows the resilience of Vietnamese economy with good development plans and appealing destination for products and capitals from overseas. So right now, Vietnam is an export-based economy. It means that a good portion of GDP generated comes from exports. So the domestic market is becoming more and more interesting for both local and foreign companies. And Vietnam is characterized by a numerous and fast-growing middle class currently. So it's accounting to 35 million people. So it's basically the quarter of the total population in the country. So the consumption market promises to explode in the coming time. So if you look at the income of this population group, it's forecast to skyrocket to at least $15,000 by 2033, which this makes a significant impact on local consumption habits, with luxury brands likely increasing their sales in upcoming years, but also new different kind of products likely to surge in demand. So as I said, like economy is fueled by strong exports and also a solid inflow of foreign capital, which stood stable over the last few years, regardless of the pandemic. We saw about 20 billion US worth of foreign capital invested into like new projects last year. And the main recipient of those investments are, of course, manufacturing and processing. It's amount accounting to about 60%. Other areas of investment were electricity production, distribution, wholesale, retail, like real estate, technology, and so on. And we also see the trend develop over the past years where foreign investors are incorporating Vietnam into their China Plus One strategy, as they come to realize that their global supply chain is largely China-centric and hence vulnerable to unpredictable scenarios, whether that be trade wars or the great decoupling of the US and China. This is usually topped off with a statement of companies seeking to combat the rising costs. After all, average manufacturing wages have tripled in the world's second economy, like basically China, while Vietnamese remains the fraction of the price.
It's incredible, isn't it? And obviously, we talk about Vietnam's economy being a miracle anyway, but it seems that it even remained an anomaly during COVID. It didn't slip into recession. Investor confidence wasn't shaken because there was still foreign capital going into the country. You did mention, of course, that the supply chain there is very sort of China-centric. I know, of course, It's not sort of the acute phase of the pandemic because we're seeing lockdowns back in China at this point in time. Is that having an effect in Vietnam at the moment at all?
Yeah, the pandemic, actually at the very early stage when China and other economies were, blocked and there were heavy lockdowns, Vietnam didn't experience the same story, and only the fourth wave of the pandemic had the significant blow on Vietnam, resulting to strict movement restrictions and lockdowns. In general, we experienced delays in and bottlenecks in local and international logistics, of course. It had significant effect on our clients in manufacturing sector, particularly who had to reroute some purchase orders to other countries. If you look at the geography, the outbreak particularly affected the southern region with the center in Ho Chi Minh. At that time, it was recording the highest number of daily cases growing. But in October last year, the government actually lifted social distancing measures and allowed businesses to resume. If you look at the north of the country and surrounding areas, it underwent the lockdown, but they were able to resume work from September last year. So I think that the fast recovery in Vietnam and also Vietnam's countrywide reopening comes after a significant shift in the government strategy. Unlike other countries, they implemented the strategy of living with virus safely rather than zero COVID tolerance approach that we see, for instance, in China, right? So starting from September last year, situation got better and economy rebounded strongly in last quarter. We thought that this year that would be following the same trajectory as the last quarter 2021. But there was another outbreak in the north, and therefore a lot of businesses actually had to implement some measures, and a lot of labor force was forced to stay at home to recover from COVID. But there were no lockdowns actually. So during this time, government also implemented support to businesses and different measures. For instance, they suspended the contributions of social insurance by employees. Some support packages to those employees who were out of work for 15 and more days. There were also support for the businesses themselves. For instance, banks have agreed to cut the lending rates, land rent reductions in some tax, for instance, corporate income tax and VAT for businesses. They were reduced for those businesses who can prove that they were affected by the pandemic. There were certain measures there were certain criteria to meet, of course. For instance, like you need to show that 30% of your income reduction was during the pandemic. But if you could prove that, you can actually get those tax reductions. And there were also some measures taken on easing the issue and renewal of work permits for foreigners, which actually was a big, big change. And a lot of foreigners actually struggled at that time, but with these new policies, it was, you didn't even have to physically submit some documents. You could just apply online. So it also attracts a lot of foreigners to be able to travel and get the permits. So starting from September last year, Vietnam gradually opened up, and in March, the borders were fully open. So now Vietnam is growing quite fast, regardless of the macroeconomic conditions worldwide, regardless of China's zero tolerance policy and war in the Ukraine. It's actually continuing to attract a lot of foreign direct investment. And it's we see that there is a spike of interest starting from March onwards in conjunction with opening of the borders, there are no quarantine measures right now on arrival, which makes it much easier for foreign investors to come to the country and actually, invest and hire people, bring their foreign staff to the country. So that's a big change.
A huge change, absolutely. And of course, a lot of those foreigners going into Vietnam and investing directly into the economy there are from the UK. What is it that sort of UK businesses are going into Vietnam for? What opportunities are they seeing within Vietnamese sectors, do you think?
All right. I think there are several areas to consider here. First of all, like if you look at the trade between UK and Vietnam, we see a significant increase. It's almost 11% last year. So the total trade of goods and services between two countries was 5.5 billion pounds in 2021. So UK is actually buying more from Vietnam than actually selling to the market. So its imports from Vietnam account to 4.6 billion pounds, and its exports to Vietnam is just 900 million pounds. So you can see that it's actually quite a lot of companies, quite a lot of British businesses are setting up the production there, producing products and export it back to UK or elsewhere. If you look at the specific categories and the products that UK exports from Vietnam, it's mainly like waste paper, pulp, some pharmaceutical products, beverages, metals, aircraft, and so on. So, and those products that are actually imported to Vietnam are telecoms, sound equipment, clothing, footwear, furniture, and steel. Those are the top categories, but of course there are many, many other products that our clients are involved in different sectors. And when we speak with our clients from the UK, what do they see exactly in the market, how they can leverage? There are several reasons that generally attract them. First of all, Vietnam is currently leveraging its so-called golden generation. People of the golden generation just entered the job market, and they will continue to contribute to the country for many years to come. So Vietnam has a large pool of labor force, which is cheap compared to many competitor countries in the area. And also, it's also very important to notice that government invested heavily into training and improving the quality of this labor force. Also, for some specific sectors, like for niche markets, they provided trainings, sometimes together with international investors. Like, for instance, semiconductors. It's a very niche category, but there are experts right now who can, there is basically the labor force that can help foreign businesses to produce this. Or another factor is also the tax incentives that Vietnam provides, particularly if you invest into prioritized industries or economic zones that government wants to develop further. So they can provide you some reduction of the corporate income tax to up to 10%, for instance, if you invest in technology for the 15 years, comparing to the traditional 20% on the market. And also, I think another key factor is which attracts a lot of British businesses is, of course, Vietnam's integration into the global trade. So all the free trade agreements that were signed with ASEAN and other majority of the global trade blocs provides reduced tariff rates or low tariff rates. So we see quite a lot of companies are actually either setting up the production in Vietnam, and then those products can be exported further to all these countries under zero tax rates or like very low reduced tax rates. Or they export it to Vietnam, they export products to Vietnam, then they process, adding some labor. Depending on each category, there are a certain percentage of labor that needs to be added, some processing, in order to qualify for these products to be considered made in Vietnam. And then they follow the same strategy. Then those products that are produced in Vietnam, they can be further exported to basically entire region, almost every country, because Vietnam signed so many free trade agreements with different blocs, different countries, so that you can actually enjoy all these reductions. If you look at fast-growing sectors, there are several which we generally point to our clients where they should basically focus, and some of our clients actually already operate in those sectors. I'll just mention a few, probably the most fast-growing right now. First of all, it's electronics. Electronic industry is booming right now. In recent years, Vietnam went from zero to hero and graduated as a key electronic exporter, becoming the 12th exporter of electronic products worldwide. It's a very fast developing sector. And if we look at the key electronic products, smartphones exports contribute to about 50% of total exports from Vietnam. And the main reason that I mentioned already a few times it's to this success is actually low labor costs and better policy incentives compared to other countries. It all started with Samsung and Intel. They invested in the South region in 2008, 2010, and they basically kicked the rise of local electronic industry. Further, they followed this investment to the north and started to attract more and more foreign direct investment. So currently, FDI projects usually linked to the big multinational leaders in this particular sector, and they have like their supply chain going through Vietnam. Another sector I should also mention is probably energy, electricity sector. It's one of the hottest sectors for foreign direct investment. New energy, renewable energy industries are in the center of Vietnamese government development strategy in the next coming years. And they focus on wind energy, solar energy, and biomasses. So if you are in this sector, if you actually operate, there are a lot of opportunities. You can participate in some big infrastructure development projects, but you can also, provide the related consultancy services for those projects, as an example. And if you look further, I think textile, like supporting industries, they were actually booming for the decade already, but the government appreciate the importance of those sectors development, and they encourage the manufacturing of textile, garment, footwear, electronics, and so on. So there are very favorable tax incentives, usually reserved for the companies who look into special economic zones to attract a higher quality investment in this region. Also, I think a lot of our clients are looking into automotive industry, mobility industry in general, especially electric mobility in the next years will be, growing with double digit. It was already growing for the past 20 years, and it continues to be the trend. It is estimated that it will grow at about 19% by 2025. So those who are actually producing the vehicles, or maybe they are working in the supporting industries, have a lot of actually factors to consider. And the reason why that became one of the fast-growing sectors is, first of all, the WTO agreement and ASEAN free trade agreement, they have some tariff cuts on vehicles, so it increasing their affordability. Also, as I said, like 1/3 of the population is actually having their disposable income growing. So it means like they can afford to buy the car, to buy the vehicle, and the government themselves want to reduce the motorcycles, which is very popular in the country. So they encourage people to actually purchase the vehicles. And another reason is the third major reason is typically considered, apart from being convenient and safer way of transportation, it's also a symbol of status, which is evident in the strength of luxury brands coming among the wealth income group. So two other sectors that I briefly mentioned is probably medical devices. Currently, 90% of medical devices in Vietnam are imported because the local production is just not being able to meet the demand. They mainly produce and supply like some basic medical supplies such as hospital beds and disposables. But other than that, government encourages the imports of foreign medical devices in the country. They offer low import duties, no quota restrictions. But the companies operating in the sector should actually note that only businesses registered in Vietnam, possessing an import license, can distribute the medical devices. So it's very important to realize that if you are in this sector, it will be difficult to do it from overseas. You actually have to establish a local office or appoint a local distributor to work with. And last sector that I should mention is probably textile. It's been emergent, like Vietnam is a giant in this area. Recently, Vietnam rose to become the third largest manufacturing hub of textile and garment, just after India and China. So it's appearing to be the top 8 exporter of textile and clothing products all over the world. And if you look at the market, like there are about 9,000 manufacturers who operate in this sector. They produce the textile, and about 30% of them are actually foreign businesses. So we ourselves see quite a lot of our clients engaged in this sector. So it's continued to be growing, and I think for the upcoming years, that will be also one of the fast-growing sectors to consider.
Yeah, textiles certainly will be one of them. And two of them that you mentioned as well there, Maria, were sort of the eco-vehicle industry, that side of the automotive sector, and also energy as well. And I think given the kind of drive toward sort of lowering carbon emissions, being more sustainable, but also the theme of energy security that's been driven by the rising oil and gas prices we're seeing at the moment, we could see those two sectors over the next few months and indeed years also growing exponentially in Vietnam, given its investment into eco cars and also into renewable energy, couldn't we?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is one of the. It's actually not only Vietnam. I think China is also looking at the same technologies, and they're encouraging foreign businesses to bring those technologies in the country. And Vietnam is no different. They try to look at everything that is green technology, everything that actually helps to develop the more greener approach to the market. And since there is no that much of their own technology developed, I think foreign investors will definitely benefit of bringing it. From our side, we always a bit cautious, and we suggest for the companies who have some IP developed to be very cautious on keeping that IP overseas and then bring it to the market maybe already assembled, or like the core IP should be done overseas, but then you bring it to the country, you bring it to Vietnam to add other components to actually process it further. But in order to protect your technology, quite a lot of our clients, they take in the approach of keeping IP abroad, if it's a company producing that technology overseas, and then in Vietnam they just add some labor and implement the project. But it's very challenging in those countries to either you either have some sort of joint venture that, like some of those infrastructure projects, for instance, they would require you to either have a local partner or you just participate as a consultant. But the core here is, to consider the protection of your technology in those sectors, which I think companies are aware of. It's just the question of how do you implement the protection of your technology.
Yeah, very important for businesses to consider, of course, moving forward as, technology becomes more in demand as we move toward sort of more kind of net zero and sustainable measures. And obviously the Vietnamese economy continues to grow. We are just about out of time on the program today, Maria, unfortunately, but it's been a real pleasure having you join us to talk about the Vietnamese economy and the opportunities that British businesses.
Thank you, Scott. It was a great pleasure to join.
It's been amazing, it's been fantastic, and just talking more about those opportunities that are out there for business. And by all means as well, I think it would be fantastic in future to perhaps sort of catch up and sort of have you back on the show, maybe to sort of discuss how the Vietnamese economy is developing further, but also discuss some other forces that are in play within various markets around the world as well. It's been very fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. It would be great to see how this all continue to develop and what are the changes in the market in the upcoming years.
Yeah, but be very good and very productive indeed. In the meantime, Maria, please do take care and stay safe with all that's still going on. And it would be, like I say, good to touch base in future.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
It was an immense pleasure welcoming Maria Kotova from Dezan Shira and Associates onto today's podcast. And I do hope that everybody tuning in thoroughly enjoyed the interview today. Just for anybody that is listening into the program today, if you are a business owner or the head of an organization which you feel might have its own story of success to share with us here at the Leaders Council, then by all means we would also like to hear from you. So why not also apply to be on our program via leaderscouncil.co.uk/apply. Until next time all, you have been listening to the Leaders Council podcast with your host Scott Challoner. Please do take care and goodbye.